Friday episode of the Dollar Bandits, a continuation of an Orin only week. And this time we have a returning guest. It's our buddy David Whalen. David is the founder of Correct Handed Comics, one of the better independent comic books out there. Please go check that out. And he is talking about all the projects he's working on, including the omnibus for his series, The Offspring. When you get that many books together and you can put out an omnibus, you're doing something right. David certainly is doing something right. This is a great interview for folks who want to get into comics. He's got a lot of information to tell, and he's been so successful, and it's because of the quality of work he puts out. So, enough of me blabbing about it. Here's David Whalen. Back with our friend David Whalen from Correct Handed Comics. Dave, how you doing?
Hey, great, Warren. Thanks so much for having me back. I really appreciate it. Always great talking with you.
Well, thank you. And I know you've been a little busy since last time we spoke. Why don't you update us on what you've been up to?
Yeah, right before the beginning of summer, I published issue 25 of my ongoing series, The Offspring, which was the big climactic finale of season two. So I was able to put out the next volume, volume six, collecting issues 23, 24, 25, our Lightning Crashes series. I was lucky enough to be able to put a backup story in one of our one shots in that one also. Will Aliens Do My Homework is the backup story we put in that one. And then in the middle of summer, around the beginning of August into July, I was able to put out Omnibus number two, which collected all of season one, issues 13 through 25. I'm rocking and rolling over here. Right now, I'm actually a little bit more than halfway through, about 60 pages through my next 100-page graphic novel that I hope to put out before Thanksgiving. Oh boy, fingers crossed. Called Latent Lightspeed, and it's a big space epic, aliens and starships and cool bad guys, and it's a story about how our morality and mortality are kind of linked together
Mhm.
in some ways. I think it's a real fun story. Like I said, I'm about 60 pages into 100 pages, so I'm hoping to have that out before Thanksgiving. If something goes wrong, it'll definitely be out before Christmas, just in time for cool gift stuff.
There you go. I want to talk about that in a second, but let's jump back. You finished issue 25. From where it ended and to where it began, did it follow
Mhm.
the path that you had initially thought it would, or did it make some twists and turns that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, there were some fun things that, as you mature, your stories are able to mature with you, you
Mhm.
know. And there were some things that I was able to kind of add in, some character moments, some things like that I think really helped drive home who these characters were and what the storyline, where their point A to point B story was going to kind of take them. But for the most part, I've had the story for a long. We talked about. I've had the story for a long time, and the overall structure of the story has never changed. Luckily, I have been able to plus it up a little bit with some of the things that have happened to the characters, to be able to add different things and think of things that I think might be able to give more insight into these characters and their feelings and where they are emotionally with the things that have been happening to them.
And I know when we spoke, you had 25 as sort of a hard cutoff. How do you start to give yourself time to start wrap up loose ends, so you're not sort of rushed at the very end to do so?
Sure. That's a good thing. I'm actually going for, I've been saying 50 issues.
Mhm.
And then I was kind of going through the story and I'm like, I think I'm missing something here. So I started like adding in little bits here and there and realized that 54 issues is
Mhm.
probably the last four issues are going to be the big climactic finale. And I know exactly what's going to happen on the last page kind of thing. It's been really good. I really like to, at the end of each season, you know how they do. You answer questions and then more questions pop up. So you have a big broad stroke to be able to jump into season three. I'm lucky enough also that season two ended on somewhat of a cliffhanger, like a lot of seasons do in TVs and these kind of things. But I was lucky enough to be able to jump into time travel with these four. Now four, it was three main characters. I've added a fourth one that I always knew was going to be there.
Mhm.
She just needed a little bit of coaxing to kind of come jump through the story. But I was lucky enough to be able to, I think, really give us good solid base for season three on this time travel thing that I'm doing. So each
Mhm.
of the stories that are going to be told, I have 2 page or 2 issue story arcs, kind of wrapping around each character and
Mhm.
giving them more little insights into the characters and their thought processes, but wrapped through fun time travel stuff.
Mhm.
So I was able to kind of set that up and set up a little bit more of those godlike creatures in us all, because they've kind of been backgrounded for the most part. You know, they're there,
Mhm.
but I'm really going to have them take a forefront in season three, because that was always the plan, to be able to do this time travel stuff and have them be a little bit more in the mix, to be able to get to know those characters a little bit also. So they're out of the shadows. They're coming out of the shadows. We're going to get to know them a little bit better also.
So it sounds like season three in your mind is already percolating along, and you sort of have an idea of what direction you want to go.
Yes, issues 26 and 27 are already thumbnailed.
Okay.
I have a pretty good idea of where I'm going to end the
Mhm.
time travel stuff,
Mhm.
and then where it's fun, the 8 issues that I have for the time travel stuff. The way that I ended, I think, gosh, I can't wait for people to see it. It's really fun because they'll crash back down onto our time, and I'll go back to something that was hinted at in issue 5. So, so I'm kind of trying to make sure that, like we talked about, closing up all those little loose
Mhm.
ends. I have a way I think that is really gonna be fun to bring back an old villain from the
Mhm.
first story arc, bring back something that happened in issue 5, and be able to really like bring those characters and those settings back into play in a way that makes common sense.
Now, it's very interesting what you just mentioned, going back to issue five to pull something from there. Was that
Mhm.
always something you planned on doing, or just as writing came along, you kind of said, you know what, issue five had something pretty cool that maybe I want to start to build upon?
Yeah, no, I introduced it on purpose. I knew that it
Okay.
was coming back. I adjusted a little bit, but I had
Mhm.
the idea for the characters that are going to be brought back in here, and they're in a page and a half of
Mhm.
issue 5. So you don't really. It's just they're there,
Right.
and they're the main bad guy in that in the issues 5 and 6 um, runs into them, has a little bit of communication with them, and then runs away. So the dog wants to get involved in our conversation. Let me. There you go. There you go. There we go. He just wanted a little attention. But the whole plan was, I really do like to, from issue 1, pop in little things that people, if they are paying attention, if they've read the whole series, will say, this looks familiar, let me go back and let me look at it. And you'll see little things that pop up from issue 1 to issue 10, 11, 12, all the way through, that are gonna kind of pop up as we go. For me, that's really fun, and because I know where I'm going, I can easily kind of just like slip certain things in
Mhm.
that hopefully people will recognize later on.
You said before that you're maturing as a writer as you go along. What are some things you're noticing about yourself and about your writing, the process that's changed from maybe when you first started?
Sure. Yeah. It's always a goal of mine to, lifelong learner. To, if you're not getting better, if I'm not getting better, then why am I doing it? And I think that's a lot of people in my situation, and creative, with creative outlets. So
Mhm.
I think that for me, I've noticed that while I've always known who these characters are, as I get through the series, I'm starting to find more unique ways to be able to show the differences in these characters. A lot of times you'll as a writer, all the people kind of talk the same, and they all kind of react the same in certain ways. And one character is the jokester, but then all the other characters are all cracking jokes also, kind of a thing. But to really hone in on who these characters are, I've had them since I was 17 years old. I feel like I know who these characters are. I know who's going to make a joke and who's going to shut their mouths, and in whatever situation. So it's really, for me, the idea of making sure that each character has that voice. And I feel like as I'm going through 25 issues, that I've really found the voice for each character. So I know how each of these characters is going to react in the same situation. They'll all react differently because they've all had different trauma in their lives. So to be able to hone in on that and really know how these characters react and what they'll say has been super helpful and super fun, to be able to make sure that they all act like individual people.
I think that's so important what you just said about knowing their voice and knowing how they would react because sometimes you read books and if you didn't have the picture in front of you, you wouldn't know who was talking because they're all
Yeah.
kind of coming out sounding the same.
Mhm.
And it really seems like you want to make sure that folks know they get to know the characters and what they're all about because that way it just enhances the story.
Yeah. One of the things for me, especially with these four characters, is to know that they don't always have to agree with each other
Hmm.
to care about each other, to love each other, to take care of each other. And I think that's one of the things. They're still arguing with each other. They're not like a superhero team. They're just four people who happen to have this trauma in their past and want to try to fight through that trauma to have some sort of normal life. And unfortunately, that's not happening for them now because they're time traveling and fighting monsters.
Right.
So so to be able to, to be able to have them disagree with each other, but yet still know that they all have each other's backs in these situations, I think is important for me. They don't not all of them 100% trust each other as of now in issue 25, but my goal is to be able to get them to a place where they do feel like family.
Hmm.
And with family, anybody knows that bickering and arguing and disagreeing come along with that from time to time.
When you published your omnibus, does it give you a moment of pause to see how much work you've done all there right in front of you?
Yeah, it really is fun. When like I said, when I came up with these characters many moons ago, it was on some level something that I hoped that I would be able to do. And while I think, like I said, lifelong learner, it's there's always still a learning curve.
Hmm.
And I'm super proud of the 25 issues and all the other books that I've put out. For me, it's always about um, getting better and really making sure that the cohesive story makes sense from issues 1 all the way to issue 54. And for me to be able to have two sets of omnibus with season 1 and season 2 um, is everything. I might not ever be able to retire off of these stories, but to be able to have them and know that I created is super important to me.
And for those, I know we spoke about it before, but for people listening now, there's a lot of folks who want to do their own comics, and you've always been, very successful with yours. What's the big thing that folks need to realize when they're getting into this?
Yeah, for me, it's always just kind of do it. If you're, there were probably times I probably could have done it maybe 5 years earlier than what I did when I started it. And I feel like not that that was wasted time because that was, time I was using to be able to better myself in other areas. I've been a teacher for 10 years before I, started, made my own company, Correct Handed Comics.
Mhm.
But I would say that if you have that story and you know what you want to say, just start it. Just go. And if you're a writer who's looking for an artist, maybe just draw up a couple pages on your own, see what happens. It doesn't need to be perfect. If you're an artist who thinks you need a writer, maybe just write down some dialogue and see what happens. I would also say that if you've got that long form story that you want to tell 5400 issues, whatever it is, maybe don't start with that. Maybe start with a 24 pager, one shot, or 5 pages for and find an anthology that you could print it in, you could get it printed in. I think that for anybody who's creative, if you truly want to do it, you'll do it. And that's just the first step, is to sitting down and writing it down or drawing it down and not worrying about it being perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But it's going to be yours. And to me, that's all that really matters.
I've been to a few cons this year, and there's so many people wanting to check out the independent comic scene and seeing these independent books. What do you think is drawing so many folks to that genre now?
Yeah, I think that the thing about indies is that it is so diverse. The big boys are telling superhero stories, and everybody loves superhero stories. I love superhero stories, but I think that one of the things about the indies is we're not trapped in it. We don't have to tell those kind of stories. We can tell any. It can be from a love story to a western to a sci-fi to a combination of all those things, and it can be maybe a little bit more intimate. then superhero fighting Brainiac for the Superman fighting Brainiac for the 357th time. While those stories are great and I love them, it's um, there's a level of like I said, intimacy, I think, that
Mhm.
comes along with independent books because you're not putting out 20 books in a month. You're putting out one book maybe every 2-3 months. Maybe
Mhm.
if you're doing it on your own, it's one book every 4 months. But you're just chugging along trying to get the books the best you can for in a shortest span to publish that you can.
And I think what makes you stand out so much is, as you said before, it's not just superhero. You like to write all different genres. So, you don't try to pigeonhole yourself into one thing. If people are looking at your books, they're seeing, a real smattering of different kind of stories. And
Mhm.
each one, it's not like, well, let me just get this out of the way so I can get back to superheroes. You really do care about all these different genres.
Yeah, some maybe would call it my ADHD kicking in. But but I really, it was one of the reasons why I started my one shot series, is because I did have others, still do. I've got a list somewhere around here of story ideas. Even if it's just one line of this guy doing this or this kid jumping here or whatever it is.
Mhm.
I've got a list of those one shots, and I try to diversify the kinds of stories that I'm telling. So my first one was a noir thriller, more of
Mhm.
like a detective type thing, no superpowers or anything. It was just a one shot story about a woman trying to do better in New York City.
Mhm.
And then it was Will Aliens Do My Homework, which is funny because we might have talked about this the last time, but it was one of the ones that came to me kind of as quicker than any other story I've ever done. I'm a teacher in upstate New York, and I was walking around my classroom, and kids were doing their stuff, and the thought popped in my head. Those intrusive thoughts that pop in your head. What if aliens were to attack right now? What would I do? And by the end of the day, I had the whole thing scripted and thumbnailed. And probably 2 months later, had it out published. So it's one of those things that freedom to be able to tell those stories. I was one of the other one shots, the Sock Hop Killer.
Mhm.
It was from my love of '80s slasher flick like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th.
Or 13th. Mhm.
I was Yeah, I was running through the woods, and you get that feeling in the back of your neck, and you're around going, looks like I feel like somebody's looking at me right now. And I was like, oh man, I gotta tell a story like that. And by the time I had made it home on my very slow jog, by the time I had made it home, I had a character and I had a loose story. And it's those kind of things that are really fun that kind of pop into your brain. But I try to tell different kind of stories through my one shots. It's kind of like a bridge
Mhm.
for the Offspring because I know that jumping onto an indie comic that is saying it's going to be 54 issues can be daunting for some
Mhm.
readers. So I try to put out those one shots in a 4 issue miniseries, 100-page graphic novel, so people can get an idea of the kind of stories I'm telling, that idea for my art. And if it's they like my voice and they like my visuals, then maybe they'll give the Offspring a shot. And it's worked out pretty good. It works out pretty good. I get a lot of comments about my one shots and how people have jumped over to get volume one or volume two of the Offspring through them. So it's worked out okay.
What's been your proudest moment so far?
I'd have to say I've got two of them.
Huh.
I have to say that the omnibus number two
Mhm.
was me knowing that no matter what I can do it.
Mhm.
I can create books that are fun for me and I hope fun for others to read. And my second one was we were talking about those intrusive thoughts when you're sitting around coming up with storyline ideas. My I call him my little brother, but he's 36, 37 now. He's got a son who was probably me as a kid, running around too loud, jumping off of things, and squirt guns and breaking things. And he is a little spitfire, but a real good kid.
Mhm.
And we were on a family vacation, and he is just jumping around, just having a good time. And I thought that kid is a comic book.
Mhm.
What can I do to get that kid into a comic book? And like I said, within a half an hour, my next 100 pager latent light speed was in my brain, and that was probably about 2 years ago. And when I published issue 25, I said, now's the time. I'm going to take the summer and the fall, and I'm going to get my next 100 pager out. And to be able to start that, and to be able to know that it was inspired by a family member, and just a fun story with spaceships, has been super satisfying. And I hope that my brother and his kid, when he gets a little older, to be able to read it, enjoy it.
So, I mean, you just brought it up, a Latent Lightspeed based on a real person. How far ahead are you thinking about that book?
So, like I said, I want to be able to have it published. My goal is by Thanksgiving, but we're getting pretty close now. So, 2 months, with still 40 pages to go. I can usually get 20 to 25 pages done in a month.
Okay.
So it's, it's not a completely undoable goal. But like I said, by Thanksgiving, I'm hoping we have that out, so it's ready for people to publish by, so people can buy it for Christmas gifts. Um, if they want to, which would be great for any of those beginning readers. But yeah, that's my goal. And then once I get that by Thanksgiving time published, then back to the Offspring. And
Mm.
2024 will be all the Offspring all the time. It'll be, I want to be able to get at least halfway through season 3, between January and December. And I'm hoping to get at least 6 to 7 issues published in 2024 of the Offspring.
So, what is the bare bones storyline for Latent Lightspeed?
So it's about a scientist who has dealt with loss, like everybody has.
Mhm.
And in his timeline, there was it's a little topical, but there was a pandemic that had had gone through the entire solar system, through different galaxies, and there was most of the species who had fought through that pandemic were able to take a vaccine to be able to cure them, to make sure that the pandemic was not a threat anymore. One of the species, the vaccine had the opposite effect, and it started killing them faster. So that species is trying to create cloning technology to be able to rebuild their species, through the cloning technology, and they're trying to find scientists, no matter where they're from, what planet they're from, to be able to help them with their cloning process. So after a few bumps in the road with the scientists that they had essentially kidnapped to be able to help them rebuild their species, they find a sign. They hear through a mole, a plant that they have in all these little scientists throughout the galaxy, that Lane Lightspeed had, and his daughter, Laxi Lightspeed, short for Galaxy Lightspeed, had cracked the code on cloning to be able to rebuild their species. Well, as they go to acquire him, to help them with his with their rebuilding their species, Leighton Lightspeed has a heart attack, and his daughter and him have to download his brain waves, his brain, into a clone of himself. And as they are the bad guys, the sick species are going to try to acquire him, kidnap him to be able to help him with their species. He doesn't get the cloning process. They don't get the cloning process completed on time. So he is essentially a 97-year-old man inside of a clone of himself as a 9-year-old boy.
Right.
So from there, hijinks ensue. The chase is on to be able to find Leighton Lightspeed and have him save the species. The bad guys will do anything they can to be able to secure him, Leighton Lightspeed, to be able to rebuild their species.
So here's my question, because it's such a big story, and now you have to sort of narrow it down. But
Mhm.
how do you, I guess, when you're doing this, set up? Okay, here's the backstory, and here's where it's going to go from there. Like, how much time do you have to give each piece so you don't run out of time?
Yeah, I've tried to really make sure that each character,
Mhm.
each storyline is given enough time to be able to kind of breathe on its own. And the old adage, show don't tell.
Mhm.
So there is wrapped inside of spaceship battles and chases, and the characters trying to clone other characters and all this stuff. That's I've tried to really wrap in all that backstory
Mhm.
into the actions of the bad guys, the good guys, the aliens, whomever it is. And I think I've gotten a pretty good handle on the characters, their motivations,
Mhm.
why they're doing what they're doing, and how maybe fanaticism can take over.
Mhm.
Um, and I won't say whether that's the good guys or the bad guys where that's
Right.
a problem, but where it can take over and they can start to have a skewed view of morality, a
Mhm.
skewed view of society, and a skewed view of their own sense of self, to be able to get to that outcome no matter what the cost.
Mhm.
And I really think that's the bottom line thing that I'm trying to tell the story of. It's how far will you go if you think you're right, and what if you're not?
Mhm.
Do you have it in yourself to go, oh man, I'm not right. I was wrong. Do you have that? Do people have that in them? And
Mhm.
I really think that's a story that I think can connect with a lot of people. And I think that through spaceships and aliens, I think I've got it. My editor, who is editing fairly quickly. He's edited a whole bunch of books for me. He's a great guy, Patrick Daniel. He gave me a great compliment a couple weeks back. He said I had to go back and edit some of the pages because I was reading them so fast because I wanted to turn the page to see what happened next. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I want you to I want you to be excited to turn the page to see what happens next. So it really was that moment, like, oh yeah, I think I've got like something really good here that people will be would could really latch onto and really kind of see themselves, and maybe family members, maybe
Mhm.
some issues that they've had in their circle of people, that they can connect to.
Could this be a book or a character that makes its way into Offspring, or do you want to keep everything as separate as possible?
Yeah, right now I'm keeping everything kind of separated. I see it as kind of like they're all in the same universe, maybe not the same time frame,
Mhm.
but I do see them all in the same universe. It's funny, as you're writing, you know this your other ideas get fed to you. You keep the ideas never stop.
Right.
So as I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, I know where the sequel's gonna go. So I'm 50 issues into. I'm like, oh, that's where the sequel's gonna go. That's what I'm doing in book two. Now, my hope is to get that just get one out right now. But the idea that there's always more there. Always more there. There's more there,
Mhm.
is something that kind of keeps me moving forward, because I know that I could potentially have some of these characters go in and out. There is at one point where the Offspring are going to go into the future,
Mhm.
so it's possible that they could run into Leighton Lightspeed or somebody from that universe.
Here's sort of a silly question, but I mean, for someone who's not a writer like you are, how do you kind of stay on task? Because I would think when you're doing one book, all of a
Mhm.
sudden something could pop into your head like, oh, you know what, that might be a cool story for this book, or you know what, this might be a good thing for a whole separate book. How do you say, okay, no, 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 I'm doing this right now?
Yeah. It's very difficult sometimes. I think that, like I said, I've got a list of some of those story ideas, and there are sometimes I usually have I'm super like non-tech with it. I've got just a clipboard, a wooden clipboard with like loose papers on it, and I just if there's one that's got a list of 20 one-shot ideas on it. So if something pops in my brain, and I know I've got to get 10 more pages of late nights to be done by the end of the week, or by the end of the whatever it is, then I will stop and I'll write down the basic idea of what I'm thinking about, and then set it aside, and go back to whatever I was doing. It can be tricky sometimes. I think that for me, as kind of like a one-man band,
Mhm.
it makes it maybe a little bit easier because I can draw and ink. I can pencil and ink 10 pages in a week, week and a half, and then I can set aside the pencils and the inks, and I can go clean it up in computer, and then I can go letter it, and then so it's always kind of like I've always got a new task, even though I'm working on the same book. It's not the same. I'm not doing the same thing the whole time. I'm able to adjust from part to part to be able to kind of keep myself moving forward. Because if you're doing 100 pages and you're just sitting there penciling, and sometimes your mind just goes kind of Play-Doh-y.
Mhm.
But because I'm able to, and I know what's going to happen, Claire, I can go from part to part, and it kind of helps revive me. I'm finishing up lettering for the next 10 pages, and I've got up to page 65 lettered. So I know that I'll get those done today. And then tomorrow I'll start on 66 all the way through 75 will be next week's agenda, or next week and a half's agenda.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, jumping from part to part is helpful to be able to keep myself completely motivated on that one task, one book.
But what's really amazing is that, I mean, you're a one-man band with this book. Like you just said, you do lettering, writing, drawing. But you also, like you said, you teach. You got a full-time job. You got a family. Are there enough hours in the day sometimes to get everything accomplished?
Never, never. It's I'm very lucky that I have a wife and two kids that give me room to be able to do, like, we'll watch a movie and I'll have my computer in front of me and I'll be lettering while
Right.
we're watching the movie. I try not to do that every time, but they know if I'm doing it, it's because I need to get that done. The same thing with, I'll have my portable light board right there, and if we're doing something, I'll have that in front of me, and I'll every once in a while walk over to it and draw some stuff down on it. And but I think that I have a pretty good um, way of, I don't divide my time, I multiply it, situation for me that helps me to be able to make sure that they're getting what they need, I'm getting what I need, and we can all kind of, they don't get too mad at me or too frustrated with me throughout the days, weeks, and months of a longer process like 100 pager. So I'm really lucky that teaching and my family are very flexible
Mhm.
to be able to give me that time to be able to do what I need to do.
How are you finding is the best way to get yourself out there to get people, familiar with your work, familiar with you in this day and age?
Yeah, any social media, while there are a lot of people that say, "Oh, I don't do this social media, I don't do this website, I don't do that. Oh, this website is the devil." Whatever they're saying about whatever website.
Mhm.
Um, it's good to be able to have your hand in all of it, to be able to, because you never know who you're going to reach.
Mhm.
So you may hate Facebook, you may hate Twitter, you may hate TikTok, whatever it is. But if you're just putting out positivity on your thing that you're creating, then people will, I think, latch on to that. Um, there's been times where I'm like, oh, this social media website isn't really getting me where I need to go. It's not getting me the likes or the views or the followers or whatever it is. So maybe I'm going to put that to the side, and I'll do one more post of a thing, and then it'll 10 more people will pop in. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to keep doing that thing too. So the social media really is a full-time job in and of itself. But I think in the long run, it's worth it to be able to, because you never know who you're gonna connect with. TikTok has been a great way to be able to connect with different kinds of people from all over the world that I never thought I'd be able to connect with, to have them see my work. So that's been something fun trying to, with my daughter loves doing it. So every once in a while we'll do one together. So to be able to have that, and be kind of the old man on TikTok, it has been fun. So it's really just about trying everything to be able to reach anybody who is out there.
Are you one, or and I know we've spoken this before, but sometimes I see these comics now, there's multiple variant covers. There's this that
Mhm.
comes with it and that comes with it. And it seems like that can become a little overwhelming for whoever's putting these things together. Do you just want to
Yeah.
do a straight, this is my comic, there you go?
Yeah. I'm really working on a point A to point B, like a straight delineation from the beginning to the end. I hear, all these a great way to be able to do this on Kickstarter, to have people buy the same book twice or whatever it is, to be able to have all these alternative covers. But quite frankly, with the amount of books that I put out, I don't want to confuse anybody. So with 6 volumes of the Offspring, collected volumes of the Offspring, with 25 issues, with 2 omnibuses, I want to make sure it's very crystal clear on what book they're getting, and which one that the which one is next in line, so that it doesn't confuse anybody. I don't want anybody to go, I already bought this book. You just a new cover on it, but I bought this book. I don't want that to happen to people, because I know how important um, um, spending your money on the right thing is. And I don't want people to feel like I'm just trying to put their money in my pocket for no reason. But I want them to feel like if they buy an issue of The Offspring, it was worth it, and that they continue buying those issues.
And we are back. It's always great to have David on the show to get the perspective of the independent community of what's going on there. Uh, I'm so happy for him. He is a great guy, a fellow pro wrestling fan, such as myself, and The Offspring, all these other projects he's working on. I mean, he is a fountain of creativity, and it's benefiting all of us because we get to enjoy it all. So, David, thank you again. When you have something else coming out, let us know. We're always happy to talk. And once again, I want to say thank you to Ryan T. Murphy. Ryan supporting us on Patreon. We really appreciate that. It helps keep things going, keeps these shows going, pays the bills. We really appreciate it. And go to YouTube, check out a video called Christmas at Wayne Manor. Ryan is a part of that. I think you're really going to enjoy it. As I said on Wednesday, if you watch it again, tell a friend, keep it going. Let's really get this video out there so folks can enjoy it for all that it is. So thank you, Ryan. Thank you, David. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Joe and Mike. Thank you, the world, for listening, watching. We just hit 50,000 downloads, which is pretty mind-blowing. So thank you all for all your support. Keep it going. We got more great stuff on the way. So have a wonderful weekend.